November 2021. After Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is sacked, Manchester United temporarily hand the team to Michael Carrick. In 3 matches, he beats Villarreal and Arsenal, draws with Chelsea, and does not suffer a single defeat. And then Carrick walks away. January 13th, 2026. He returns, for now, only until the end of the season. 4 days later, United beat Manchester City 2-0 and then defeat Arsenal on their own ground, 3-2. Twice, Carrick takes charge of the club in crisis. Twice, the team begin winning almost immediately. But is he capable of doing more than simply calming Manchester United down? Can he truly bring the club back? To understand why players begin trusting him so quickly, we need to return to Wallsend, the place where Carrick learned to see the solution before the ball even reached him. Michael Carrick grew up in Wallsend, a working-class town in the northeast of England, where football was part of everyday life. His father, Vince, helped out at the local Wallsend Boys Club and brought his son there at the age of 4. The family recalled that even at 18 months old, Michael barely noticed ordinary toys whenever there was a football nearby. At 5.5, he was already playing in a league for children under the age of 9. His opponents were older, faster, and much stronger, so Carrick's team regularly suffered heavy defeats, sometimes by a score of 14-0. But it was precisely those defeats that gave him a quality Manchester United players would recognize many years later. Against older children, Michael could not rely on strength. He had to understand in advance where the ball would go, where the free space would appear, and what he would do after receiving a pass. His first coaches noticed that Carrick constantly lifted his head before the ball reached him. While everyone else was only beginning to assess the situation, he already had the solution prepared. Have you ever wondered why the game suddenly seems easier when certain midfielders are on the pitch? They do not necessarily touch the ball more often than everyone else, or provide the final pass. They simply remove a problem before their teammates have even had time to notice it. Carrick began learning that in matches where his team were losing by 14 goals. By the age of 13, many English clubs were following him. Michael himself supported Newcastle, stood on the Gallowgate end, and dreamed of playing at St. James's Park. But when his favorite club temporarily closed their reserve team and could not offer him a clear pathway into senior football, Carrick chose development and left for West Ham's academy. And he arrived in London as a striker. Michael ended up in midfield by accident. Before a match against Leyton Orient, the team were short of a midfielder, and 15-year-old Carrick was asked to play deeper. Suddenly, the entire pitch opened up in front of him, and his ability to see the game in advance became his greatest weapon for the first time. At almost the same time, Carrick grew by around 20 centimeters. His body could not adapt quickly enough. Injuries followed, and he lost almost 2 youth seasons. So instead of relying on speed and physical duels, Michael developed his first touch, passing, and positional awareness even further. That is why players would later begin trusting Carrick the coach so quickly. Since childhood, he had been accustomed to spotting danger early and making a difficult situation clearer for everyone else. But that raises another question. Why did Sir Alex Ferguson decide that this calm and almost invisible midfielder should replace Roy Keane, the loudest and toughest leader at Manchester United? Ferguson chose Carrick precisely because he was not looking for another Roy Keane. He did not need a copy of his former captain. Manchester United were changing. Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney were developing alongside him, and the team needed someone who could connect defense with attack and give his talented teammates greater freedom. By that point, Carrick had already made his way from West Ham's academy into the first team. In 1999, he won the FA Youth Cup. West Ham defeated Coventry 9-0 on aggregate across the 2-legged final, and Michael scored twice. After West Ham were relegated, he spent a season in the First Division before moving to Tottenham, where he finally became the midfielder through whom almost every attack began. Carrick rarely appeared in spectacular highlight compilations. He did not constantly try to dribble past opponents, and he did not look for a shot every time he approached the penalty area. His most important contribution often came several passes before the goal. Michael would receive the ball under pressure, turn the attack around, and find the area from which the team could continue moving forward. That was why Carrick was especially highly valued by footballers who controlled matches from central midfield themselves. Xavi Hernandez said, "Carrick gives United the perfect balance. He is an excellent passer, he can shoot, and he is a completely rounded footballer." In the summer of 2006, United paid £18 million for him and gave him Roy Keane's number 16 shirt. Just imagine the supporters' reaction. Keane shouted, commanded, and could change the mood of an entire match with a single tackle. Carrick spoke quietly, rarely showed emotion, and usually stopped an opposition attack with the correct position rather than a hard collision. Ferguson himself explained the decision like this: "In the modern game, you do not need enforcers in the old sense. Anticipation decides everything. Michael is the best central midfielder in English football." That was Ferguson's idea. Roy Keane controlled the team through pressure and personality. Carrick did it through SpaceX and rhythm. Gary Neville later found a surprisingly accurate comparison for his football. "Playing alongside Scholes and Carrick is like walking into a bar and hearing magnificent piano music. It calms you down. Sometimes it is nice to listen to loud rock, but sometimes you want the piano. Carrick is the piano." Carrick was the piano. In his very first season with Carrick, United reclaimed the league title. 1 year later, they won the Premier League and the Champions League. Across 12 seasons, Michael would make 464 appearances for the club and win 18 trophies. Ferguson had been right. Sometimes, to replace one great midfielder, you need to find someone who is nothing like him. But there was another side to that calmness. Carrick rarely showed what was happening inside him. That was why, after the 2009 Champions League final, almost no one realized that a single mistake had broken the man everyone considered the calmest player in the team. The 2009 Champions League final was supposed to confirm the beginning of a new era for Manchester United. Ferguson's team were defending the trophy, and Carrick faced Barcelona as the player through whom almost every attack began. But after he lost the ball in midfield, the Catalans launched the move that ended with Samuel Eto'o scoring the opening goal. From the outside, it looked like one mistake in a match where almost nothing worked for United. Carrick saw it differently. He decided that this was the exact moment his team lost the final, and for almost 2 years, he could not escape the feeling of guilt. What amazes me about this story is just how invisible everything was. Carrick continued playing, training, and winning trophies, so everyone around him saw the same calm midfielder they had always known. Inside, however, he was suffering from anxiety and apathy and had stopped enjoying football. At the 2010 World Cup, Michael was in such a state that he secretly hoped he would not be asked to play. Just imagine it. A footballer is at the tournament he has dreamed about since childhood, but his greatest fear is hearing the manager call his name. His wife Jill and his parents helped him through that period. Carrick did not speak publicly about what he had experienced until 2018, after his playing career had already ended. That is why his calmness would later stop looking like natural unflappability. He simply knew far too well that a person can continue doing their job while falling apart inside. In 2017, his body sent another warning signal. After a match against Burton, doctors discovered that Carrick had a cardiac arrhythmia. He underwent an ablation procedure, returned to the pitch, and completed his final season as United captain. His quiet personality was often mistaken for softness, although Wayne Rooney warned people not to make that mistake. "Do not be fooled by his quiet and reserved manner. Michael has real steel in him. He does not take shit from anybody." Carrick had learned how to hide pressure, but as a coach, he did something different. He began noticing it in others. The only question left was whether a man with no experience as a head coach could do more than support his players. Could he build an entire team around that understanding? After retiring as a player, Carrick did not leave Manchester United. Jose Mourinho immediately offered him a place on his coaching staff, and the Portuguese coach valued more than Carrick's understanding of football. The main quality is being a man, in capital letters. Football is not full of them. Michael is honest, loyal, and genuine. Later, he worked on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's coaching staff, and after the Norwegian was sacked, Carrick temporarily took charge of the team himself. 3 unbeaten matches showed that he could quickly calm a dressing room, but that was not enough to understand whether Carrick knew how to build a team from scratch. That opportunity arrived in October 2022. Middlesbrough were 21st in the championship, just 1 point above the relegation zone. Carrick abandoned the system with 3 central defenders and switched to a 4-2-3-1. But here is the important part. He asked his players to beat the press through short passes. On the pitch, it looked fairly simple. 1 defender moved higher, an additional passing option appeared alongside the 2 central midfielders, and 5 players stretched the opposition defense further forward. That was how the familiar 4-2-3-1 transformed into a 3-2-5 in possession. Interestingly, Carrick did not begin with complicated transfers. He began with a player many people had already written off. Chuba Akpom had spent years moving between loan spells and remained an ordinary striker with inconsistent goal-scoring numbers. Carrick dropped him into a free number 10 role and allowed him to search for space between the lines. Akpom scored 28 goals, was named the championship's best player, and later said, "Carrick is the manager I have dreamed of having throughout my entire career. From the moment he arrived, he put me in the number 10 role and gave me complete freedom to move around the pitch. I give 110% for him because he believed in me in a way no one else ever had." Middlesbrough won 13 of Carrick's first 17 matches, climbed to 3rd place, and finished the season in the playoff positions. Because of their short passing and fearless attempts to play through pressure, the team were even nicknamed Middle-Salona. Middlesbrough, Barcelona, Middle-Salona. Carrick had now proved that he could do more than understand a player under pressure. He could change that player's role in a way that made him believe in himself again. That was the answer missing after his brief spell at United. But there was also an unpleasant side to the story. Middlesbrough never reached the Premier League, losing in the playoff semi-final, while their attractive football did not always work against teams that defended deep and refused to leave space. So before Carrick returned to Old Trafford, one major practical question remained. Would his ideas work in a place where a coach is expected to deliver not progress, but victories right now? After his work at Middlesbrough, one major question remained. Could Carrick's ideas work at a club where the manager is given no time to experiment? In the Championship, he was expected to deliver progress. At Manchester United, every poor result turns into a crisis, while calmness can easily be mistaken for a lack of character. On January 13th, 2026, Carrick returned to Old Trafford. His contract ran only until the end of the season, and the team were sitting in 6th place. The board did not promise him the permanent job. His task was to stabilize a season that had once again begun to fall apart. His first opponents were Manchester City. Carrick restored a familiar back four, made the team more compact, and started Harry Maguire against Erling Haaland. United won 2-0, while one of the most dangerous strikers in the world failed to register a single shot on target. There was a special symbolism to that victory. Long before they faced each other in the dugouts, Pep Guardiola had said this about Carrick. "He is one of the best holding midfielders I have ever seen in my life, by a big, huge distance." 1 week later, the team traveled to face league leaders Arsenal. In the 87th minute, with the score at 2-2, Matheus Cunha scored the winner. Then came victories over Fulham and Tottenham. Carrick began his second spell at the club with 4 consecutive wins, even though only recently many people had viewed him as nothing more than a temporary solution. Wait a minute. How had a coach without major trophies changed a team so quickly, when far more famous managers before him had failed to stabilize it? Carrick did not overload the players with new demands. He restored a clear 4-2-3-1 formation, dropped the defensive line slightly deeper, and gave every player a role that suited his strongest qualities. Harry Maguire no longer had to defend enormous spaces behind him. Kobbie Mainoo regained his place in central midfield, where he could play his way out of pressure. Bruno Fernandes returned to the free number 10 role, while a striker ahead of him began opening up space for the captain. At first glance, Carrick had simply made the football easier, but that was exactly what he had been doing throughout his entire life. As a child, he had to spot free space before his older opponents did. Alongside Ferguson, he learned how to control a match without shouting or constantly relying on physical confrontations. After the final in Rome, he understood how invisible internal pressure could be. And at Middlesbrough, he saw how trust and the right position could completely transform a player's career. Now, all of those qualities were working at the same time. Carrick spotted the problem early, restored a clear role for the player, and created a structure in which he could feel confident again. Across 17 matches, United collected 39 points, more than any other Premier League team over the same period. They averaged 2.29 points per game, which across a full league season would have produced a pace of 87 points. The team climbed to third place and returned to the Champions League. Would you have given Carrick a permanent contract after a run like that? The United board answered yes. On May 22nd, the club extended his contract until 2028. The man who had been invited in January to rescue what remained of the season was now given the opportunity to build the team further. But there is one problem. 17 matches are still a short sample. Even during that run, it was clear that United found it easier to play against strong opponents who left space than against teams defending in a deep block. The following season would bring Champions League football, squad rotation, injuries, and opponents who would prepare specifically for his ideas. Carrick had never completed a full season in charge of a club of this size. He had not yet won a major trophy as a manager, and had not proved that he could maintain this level across 10 months. That is why a successful run cannot automatically be declared the beginning of a new era. But the main question can already be answered. Carefully. Michael Carrick has proved that he can restore structure, confidence, and a place among England's strongest teams to Manchester United. Whether he can bring back league titles and turn a short revival into a new era can only be answered by a full season. Throughout his entire career, Carrick saw the next pass before everyone else. Now he must see the future of Manchester United before the chaos returns.